Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to the March 11th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today we're bringing you a familiar topic: how farmers and agriculture can build consumer trust, but from a bit of an unconventional angle. Last month, the Iowa Farm Bureau PR team invited former FBI special agent and spy recruiter Robin Dreeke to deliver the keynote address at our annual Farm Team training event. Farm Team, which is an acronym that stands for Farmer Advocates Reaching Main Street, is an exclusive, invite-only training for Iowa Farm Bureau members who are looking to refine their consumer engagement skills. For years, we've offered our Farm Bureau members research-based strategies for building trust, but Robin's expertise brings a truly unique twist to that conversation. I mean, who has encountered more challenging trust-building conversations than someone who recruited spies for a living? Iowa Farm Bureau's Caitlin Lamb sat down with Robin before he presented to our members, and here's that conversation.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, also for lending us your expertise during this year's Farm Team training. So I have so many questions for you, but first I wanted to ask, what led you down this path of essentially creating a formula to help people hold better conversations and build trust?
Asking the life arc question. And that's really what I talk about and share in every aspect of my life now. And that is, yes, I'm a United States Naval Academy graduate. From there, I went to the Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, I went in the FBI. I was in the FBI for 22 years, plus 5 years in the Marine Corps. That's lots of federal time. And during that time, I served in New York City. I was in New York City during 9/11. I was 5 blocks from the Trade Center when it was hit. I saw people jumping from the North Tower. I had an engine that hit the South Tower, land 30 feet from my car. I mean, I was right in the middle of it all. My entire time in the FBI, I'm not a criminal guy, but I was a counterintelligence guy. And what that means in the FBI is, for my entire career, 22 years, I recruited spies. Specifically, I recruited Russian intelligence officers. Our country is infiltrated with Russian intelligence officers, much more so than the common man knows. Most countries do this. Matter of fact, I don't know of any country that doesn't do that. So my job was to protect the national security of the United States and our NATO allies. And by doing that, we recruited allies. So when you combine my time in the Marine Corps, which is all about leadership, and you combined selling a product of American patriotism to someone who doesn't want to buy it, like a Russian spy, my entire life is about having a great conversation. My entire time, and I started having these epiphanies, as we often have when we get older in life, of what I was actually doing. Like when I'm recruiting a spy or a confidential human source, or I was leading Marines or dealing with my own kids, what are you doing in every situation? You're really focusing on, how do I inspire this person to trust me? In order for them to trust me, they have to feel safe with me. What am I actually doing to make them feel safe with me, that they're willing to share backgrounds and challenges in their life and priorities and pain points and all these aspects of their life that they're having an issue with? And then how can you offer yourself as a resource for them overcoming that issue? All these things we're talking about is leadership, and all these things requires communication that's not about you, but it's all about them. And that life arc of mine started when I was younger, of I just want to be liked like everyone else, didn't want to get bullied anymore, wanted to achieve all these things in life. And what all those things and everything in life takes is great allies, and those allies are forged by trust. So that's where that whole thing started, and it's where it's at right now.
Is there some type of pivotal moment that you can think of where you've gone through all of these experiences, you're starting to really reflect about your communication style and the things that build trust, and all of a sudden now it's this huge integral part of your life? So when did that shift happen?
So the first aha moment, besides being almost thrown out of the Naval Academy 4 times for academic review boards because my academics suck so bad, besides those, the first real true humbling one, where it came down to how I was communicating, was in the Marine Corps. I am a second lieutenant at Cherry Point, North Carolina, in my job, my MOS, my military occupational specialty. And I thought I was a great guy, kind of like this, gregarious, outgoing, a chatter. But I came to the first review. One thing the Marines are really good at, and that is judging and rating others. And my first review as a second lieutenant, again, my self-perception was I'm a great guy. People love me. My fellow Marines love me. And it came to the first review, and there was 14 second and first lieutenants, and I was ranked 14. I was dead last, 14 out of 14. And there's an aspect of the story I don't often tell, I'll share here. The guy that rated me, my reviewing officer, is a major in the Marine Corps. He had actually been with me at the Naval Academy. He was a company officer at the Naval Academy. He stood by me as I was getting at these academic review boards, and he stood by my side to keep me in the Naval Academy from getting thrown out. And my reputation at the Naval Academy is great. So one of the things that kept me there was I formed great allies, great alliances, so that he knew me really well. And so he ranked me dead last. And his first words to me was, Robin, what happened to you? Oh, that's a humbling moment. It's like, you used to be so good. What happened? So that's a slap in the face. And I said, I don't know. I said, what am I doing wrong? And he goes, oh, that's easy. You need to be a better leader. Be a better leader. Boy, just listen to those words, be. How many times in our lives have we heard, you just need to be this, you need to be that? But without a frame of reference of specific actions to take, it's falling on deaf ears. Because from my perception, I was a good leader. I was liked. I thought liking equated leadership. Two completely different things. And I was befuddled, and I looked and I said, how do I be a better leader? And he goes, oh, that's easy too. You need to make it about everyone else but yourself. Huh. I thought I was. How do you do that? And he goes, I don't know. Just figure that out. So the gauntlet was laid down. How do you make it about everyone else but yourself? So when we go back to our earlier life arcs that many of us face, especially in a, as I call it, a farm hard area of the world where you grew up with grit, resilience, self-reliance, it makes you very self-centered, not from an ego, vanity, look at me. No, self-centered and survival. When we are facing trauma and challenging situations at an early point in our lives, before the prefrontal lobe's fully formed, we get survival mechanisms. And survival mechanisms make us self-centered because we need to make ourselves feel safe because the world around us isn't helping us feel safe. And so when you get a life rep start going and patterns our behavior of take care of me, take care of me, take care of me, well, that's counter to leadership, which is take care of others, take care of others, take care of others. Now, if you grow up in a household that has challenges with other siblings and things like that, you have a more balance to that equation. You have, I call it the dichotomy of everything in life. You have balance in the dichotomy between self and others. Mine was out of balance. I grew up in a very challenging environment with challenging financial environment, and I had to take care of me. But I cared deeply about others. So what happens is, for me, it deeply troubled me because I wronged someone. Someone said I was making it all about me. And so I took it as a personal challenge in my life that, what do I need to do? Then let's fast forward throughout. I got better at this because I started having real world experiences where I literally threw myself in the line of fire to protect my Marines from harming themselves in their careers or other things they were doing. I get in the FBI. And in the FBI, my job was recruiting confidential human sources. How do you inspire someone to do something? And I use that word inspire, which we'll talk about in a second, as opposed to influence or persuade. Persuasion and influence is about what I want you to do. If I think in terms of how do I inspire someone to something, that inspiration has to come from within you. So how do I inspire someone to unlock something within themselves? And hopefully it'll align with the things that I'm hoping for them as well. And so when I get in the FBI, my job was to inspire someone to cooperate with me to protect the national security of the United States. And yes, it might cause harm to their professional reputation, personal reputation, and in cases where you're recruiting an intelligence officer from a foreign country, it could get them killed or their family killed or at least ruin their entire family legacy. You don't do that by manipulation. You don't do it by subterfuge or deception, all those hooky, spooky spy things people see in the movies. Because if we feel someone isn't being open, honest with us, they aren't being transparent and showing some sort of vulnerability that they're willing to let their guard down and show their true blemishes out, we don't trust them. And you don't trust them, you're not going to put your life in their hands or their financial well-being, their family's well-being, their jobs, their livelihood. And so that's how that all came about.
I want to go back to something you said about persuasion, and influence. And I think we're a lot better about it in agriculture now, but it used to be we thought that if only we could educate consumers about agriculture, they would trust us. They could understand what we're doing and see that what we're doing is the right way to do it. And that wasn't incredibly effective. And so now we have switched to a better focus on more meaningful relationships, on having better conversations. So in your experience, how can we do that better? How can we build trust from the ground up?
You hit it right there in the language you used, which was really, really strong and powerful. And that was, we wanted to educate them on X. Well, that's great, but it fell flat. But it's all about what you want to do. So how do we make that statement about them? It's like the mindset now is, how do I inspire them to want to learn about agriculture? How do I inspire them to want to be curious about how what we're offering is better for their lives, makes them healthier in what they're doing? And so that is the basic principle of all human interaction, is just realizing everyone you're talking to and engaging with is acting in what they think is the best interest of them and their families. Our job is to figure out what they think that is from their perspective. If we think we have something that can be a resource for them in terms of those priorities, well, how do we inspire them to want to learn more about something that can be a resource for them to be good for them and their families in their life? So that's the mindset shift, is inspiration, because it's got to birth from inside them. That curiosity has to spark from them to want to learn more. I always say, you don't plant seeds with people to do something different by telling them what you think. You plant seeds with them by asking them what they think. And that's what the reversal comes in.
And I think this isn't exclusive just to farmers, but it's just human nature that as someone is talking to us about something and we hear perhaps a piece of misinformation or something we would like to correct, that's the first thing we want to do. But I will say, especially, farming is different. To a lot of these people, it's not just a job, it's a legacy, it's their livelihood, it's been passed down from generation to generation. So they very much take those things to heart. So how can we kind of set that aside when it's so ingrained in us to go there to correct that misinformation?
That is the greatest challenge of every human being, no matter what you do, and especially when you're in the farming way of life. When someone doesn't understand how emotionally attached you are to the outcome of what it is you're doing, it makes us really defensive. It makes us feel very insecure when someone negates what it is we're doing, negates our purpose and our why behind what we're doing, because it's assaulting it. And we get very defensive when that happens, and we want to fight and battle back immediately. Human beings have this incessant need to want to correct others, and incessant need to want to prove ourselves right compared to someone else. You got to take a pause. Because every time you're doing engagement with any human being, especially if you don't know them, I have to make sure that I'm going to take a second to ask myself, is what I'm about to say and come out of my mouth going to help or hinder what it is I'm trying to do? And what is it I'm trying to do? I'm trying to inspire them to want to learn more about what it is I can do to make their life and their family more healthy and prosperous in their lives. And so it's taken that pause to do what I call a science experiment, because all these things are science experiments. You know, like, how can I put together a beautiful conversation and conduct a science experiment to inspire them to be curious about things I can offer them in their lives to solve their problems?
So one thing that we talk a lot about with our farmers is trying to figure out what the shared values are between you and another person. And it's funny because, like, in espionage movies, it seems like someone only comes to your side because there's leverage. They have someone held hostage or they're giving you lots of money. But what is an actual real life way to kind of demonstrate that you are on the same page?
It's discovering that life arc, for one thing. I'll give you an example of what I generally do that. We already talked about it. What's the general motivation of all human beings? You want to feel safe. You want your family to feel safe and prosperous. You want to be a provider. You want to take care of those you care about in your lives, or things or people you care about. It doesn't matter if it's family, friends, colleagues. You're always going to be acting in what you think is the best interest of others. Again, as long as you're not edging up high on psychopathy or narcissism or something like that, where you're completely self-centered. But in general, most of the population is acting in their best interest. And you can't disregard the fact that from their point of view, they put a lot of time and effort into thinking about what it is they're doing and the decisions and things they have in process in their brains. So here's one thing people be good for them to do is to remember, for as much time and effort in education a farmer has on how they do what they do and the why and the purpose behind what they do and the reasons why they know it's so good for others, the people that might not have that same point of view put as much time and effort into their point of view. And so you can't be dismissive of it, because if you are, what happens? That defensiveness comes up and then a battle ensues. And so you have to first explore that point of view. That's why I talk about what I call the life arc, discovering someone's life arc. A very, very simple thing you can do with absolutely anyone in any kind of situation. You bump into someone on a street, you bump into someone at a meeting, a conference, you say, so, Caitlin, what was it all those years ago that inspired you to be so passionate and caring about what it is you're doing today? And I did not box you in on what it is you wanted to talk about, but you care and are passionate about something today. By leaving it open-ended about that and asking about what it is that spark was, here's what hopefully is going to start cognating in your brain, because something's working in your brain right now, and I don't know what that is. But you're thinking back to yourself, what's important to me in my life right now? What am I doing? What am I passionate about? That's hopefully what it's doing. And by thinking that way, what am I doing? I'm seeking your thoughts and opinions about a priority, challenge, or pain point in your life right now. Hopefully what will happen from that point is you'll start sharing about, well, actually, I'll ask you the question. So what was the spark of inspiration who inspired you to kind of be who you are and doing what you're doing today?
I thought I was the interviewer.
But it's a great example about how anyone can do it in any situation. And pick anything. It could be about your job. It could be about your kids, family.
Who I am today.
Your passion and your why.
I mean, an easy one to go toward is one that you mentioned. I'm a mom, and there's nothing I'm more proud of than my two kids. And we talked earlier about my son and then also my daughter showing an interest in farming. And so being able to help them grow that passion and honestly just a work ethic, it has been really fun. Like my son, when we go to the farm, he gets mad if we don't have enough work that day. That's obviously rewarding, and it makes me feel like, okay, well, we're on the right path, and that's what I want to keep doing.
There's so much in there that is fascinating and curious to explore. One thing that really stuck out to me, though, is the work ethic. So who do you think it was when you're growing up that kind of modeled the work ethic for you?
Probably my dad. He did work really hard, but I also knew the people who worked for him, and it always stood out to me that they would say he would never ask me to do something that he would not do himself. And that was really powerful to me because I wanted to kind of be the same way, that I would never give someone like the grunt work if I wasn't willing to do it, or, I would have their back.
And Caitlin, in 1.5 minutes, we got beyond everything, and we talked about core motivations and human values of what we can both identify with. Work ethic, family. And so that's the key motivation, to have a great conversation with someone about anything. It doesn't matter if it's farming. We didn't even, and see, you answered about your kids, but farming came into it. So that's how you have a great conversation. You pay attention, you become deeply present, not with the agenda of what it is you want to talk about, but listening to what the other person wants to share. And then being curious and filling out the nooks and crannies about what it is they share. By being present, asking what questions, being curious, be non-judgmental about what's coming out, finding areas to identify and find commonality in. There's tons of commonalities in there that everyone listening can have a commonality with.
So I know I was part of that conversation, and I'm still sitting here like, how did we get there?
But isn't that cool, though? I didn't have a script. I didn't have anything. I had one question. What was a spark and inspiration that inspired you to be who you are today? You chose where we're going. And that's what the importance of this conversation is that we're sharing with everyone listening is, how do we have a conversation with someone that we don't have to memorize or we don't have to try to do anything? Because every time we try to have an agenda or a script or something to try to do to win someone over, of influence or persuade them, the focus is on us and what we're doing. And where the focus needs to be is on you. You completely drove that entire thing. The only thing I had in my mind was I asked a spark question. I call them spark questions.
I mean, you dropped that very naturally, and that would not be natural for everyone, especially if someone's coming to you and they know perhaps that you're a farmer and they're talking about something else. How do you naturally shift gears so that you're getting those spark questions, you're getting to that, the sense of who they are, but also still validating that we started in this area of concern.
So in other words, if someone's coming at you angry or disgruntled or...
Yeah, let's work through this. One time I had someone approach me and they had a concern about herbicide use. That's something that farmers use, but some people do have concerns about its health impacts. So if someone knows me as a farmer and they come to me and they are asking me these questions, what's the balance as far as validating what we're talking about, which is maybe pesticide usage, and then also finding their life arc?
Someone came at me, it's like, hey, I'm really concerned about herbicides and what farmers are putting into food and putting in the ground and putting on the crops. It's like, wow, it's a lot of valid points in there, and I completely understand them because I care about what goes into my family's mouth as well. Help me understand. What kind of things have you learned about herbicides over the years? Asking what questions, and they're going to share with you that background. It's like, you put a lot of thought and time into this. What was that spark that inspired you to care so much about this and how it impacted your family? They're going to share with you exactly where they're standing on all these things, their background. And so they could share something about when I grew up, someone in my family got sick because of X, Y, and Z, or I had this experience here, or I saw it on the news. As wow, you make a lot of really valid points. Tell me more about that. Simple tell me more question. And then you can then empower them with choice. I'm curious. I had a lot of very similar experiences with health issues and everything else. And my experience was a little bit different than yours about the outcome and where it all originated from. You can float it out there. If they explore it back, say, well, tell me more. They can ask you, tell me more about what your experience was. Or you can say, are you curious about that? Because I'd like to get your thoughts and opinions about what my experience was. Do you mind if I share them? See what I did there? Because basically what I'm trying to do is, Caitlin, is I'm trying to tell you what my experience is that's different than yours. I want to tell you why the herbicides I'm using are actually not harmful for you. So how do I do that? First, I validated you by being curious about your life arc and how you come to your understanding of what herbicides are doing. And then I say, I've had a lot of very similar experiences with caring about my family's health. And what I learned along my path was, I think, maybe a little bit different. I'm curious. I'd like to share it with you and get your feedback on what that impact is. In other words, basically what I just said, I asked you permission, so I empowered you with choice, but I want your feedback on what you think about that is. So they're forced, because I'm asking them a question about what it is I think. It's a double reversal, so they got to pay attention to what I'm saying because I'm asking them what they think about it. They have to listen because after I share what I'm going to share about what I think about herbicides and what their healthy impact is on being able to feed the world. So Caitlin, after I shared that, I'm curious, what do you think about that? You're either going to have a staunch, hard, cabal speaking, no. I say, hey, you make a lot of fair points. I'll see you later. Or they won't. But either way, because you made the entire conversation about them and you're not trying to sell a bill of goods of an agenda, you left them feeling better for having met you. You left them with a different impression than everyone else they battled on the concept of herbicides. Because you didn't battle. You had a conversation that you made it all about them and herbicides and what their viewpoints on them were. While at the same time, you inspired them to listen to your viewpoints on herbicides by asking their thoughts and opinions about what I'm telling you about herbicides. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I heard a lot of really good things in there. First of all, the way that you validate someone who has concern. I think sometimes people think validating means you're in agreement.
Never.
But
or sometimes, I should say.
But just being able to say, that's a valid concern. And then that way they feel heard. And then also, you never once said their experience was wrong. Because I think we forget sometimes that personal experience and how rooted you can be in that. And you've even said in a couple of your examples, it looks like you've done your research. And I don't think it's reasonable sometimes to come into conversations expecting that you're going to fully reverse whatever that person has experienced and held for that long. And then also, yeah, the way that you elicit feedback on your feedback definitely keeps the conversation, I would say, safe.
And a great word to use, safe. It makes them feel safe in the conversation because they don't feel like they're being confronted. They don't feel like they're being assaulted with your ideas. The thing that you said was really important there too is you're not going in trying to convince them of a new point of view. Let go of that. Don't try to convince anyone of everything. If you can engage everyone with the hope that you can spark some curiosity. That's it. And validation, when we're talking about validation in this context, when you're faced with something that someone says and you're not quite sure what to say, slow down and ask yourself, how can I show some curiosity here? And use a what question, because what questions makes people be very specific. When you start asking, well, why do you think that way? That becomes very subjective. Ask what question. Say, oh, what was your experience that gave you that opinion? What makes people be very specific? And if they can't answer, fumble it. Don't say, ha ha. No. You say, because what happens is people reflect after conversations they had when they're meaningful. And when they can't answer a specific what question that you asked them, it makes them think, maybe I didn't have that as well thought out as I thought I did. And the things he was saying made some sense, or she was saying made some sense. So again, what did you do? You sparked curiosity in them. You planted seeds. Again, not by telling them what you think, by asking them what they think. And if they can't answer with specificity, because you gave them a lot of credit for doing a lot of great research. That's what validation is. And is also curiosity. One of the things that human beings respond very well to is when you give a compliment in an area that exceeds what maybe their actual performance might have been, they try to live up to that performance, believe it or not. So if you said you've done a lot of really good research, I can tell on this. And if they haven't, they generally go back and do more research.
Yeah, and what you just described, I've heard of as the illusion of explanatory depth, where someone thinks that they know more than they do, but when you start asking them these open-ended questions, then they're like, maybe I need to reconsider where I heard that, or the source, or, go back and rethink, or you give me praise for being such a great researcher. Maybe I should do a little bit more.
The key here, you're so right. It's extremely effective. The key here is, though, got to watch it. You can't be patronizing. You can't be doing it for a gotcha, because again, what's happening when you're doing those things is your ego is leaking in. You have to be doing it from a very good place of, remember, I'm just trying to inspire them to be curious. And part of that is being very congruent with your verbal and nonverbal behavior. You have to feel it in here in the core of who you are, and then it has to be expressed in your words coming out. If there's incongruency and you start looking a little creepy, you don't make people feel safe. It's got to come from, that's why you have to imbue, all I want to do is have a great conversation. I want to be the person they can't wait to see walk around that corner and have a conversation with. And so how am I going to do that? And the only thing I hope to do is I hope to achieve sparking some curiosity in what it is I do, so that I can be a resource for them to make their lives better and healthier.
I do want to go back to something that you had said about when you're having a conversation and basically it ends in like an agree to disagree, because we often talk to our farmers about the movable middle, and we describe that as like a bell-shaped curve, and on one side are all the people who love you and they get you, and then we have these people in the middle who generally trust farmers, but they might have questions about farming practices. They need more information to feel confident in their choices. And then we have these people all the way over on the other end who might be activists. They're anti-everything agriculture. And so when you meet someone who's like that, who's like so anti, is it worth exploring some of these things with them? Or is it just like, let's cut our losses right here and go on our own way?
So every individual and every human you engage is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to adapt yourself according to them. So there's not a one size fits all. And your energy level for doing this is going to vary and ebb and flow as well, because difficult people require more energy. So it kind of depends on where you're at engaging that. Things I don't do personally is I don't like for myself to say, let's agree to disagree, because we just agreed that we disagree. And I don't like leaving people with a feeling that he just disagrees with me. I do like having people feel better for having met me, because ultimately, even when dealing with the hardliners that you can never change their mind, if I can leave them with a sense of, I definitely understand Robin, I might not agree with what he's doing, but boy, I definitely know his heart is in the right place.
And going back to something that you said kind of toward the beginning, where you were getting reviewed in your 14th out of 14th. not to bring it up again. Sorry.
It's a good moment. It's a great one.
So obviously some of these things are not necessarily natural or ingrained in us. So next time you're having a conversation with someone, if you can only choose one thing to do, because you might not remember everything right away, it takes practice. What's a good place to start?
Get curious, let go of an agenda, and listen to what it is they're saying without getting defensive about what it is they're saying. Instead of thinking in terms of that, I got to convince Caitlin how wrong she is and how that's so stupid. Think to yourself is, how can I inspire her to listen to a different point of view? If you can give yourself at least a pause when you have that visceral reaction when someone says something, you want to battle back, just stop a second and say to yourself, how can I make it about them? How can I reverse it? How can I seek a thought and opinion here? How can I get curious about how it is they have that point of view? It sounds like it's a lot of things, but it's really not. It's just get curious and let go of your need to correct others and battling context. Because I guarantee shields will be up and no one's going to listen to a word you're saying.
How can you inspire someone in your life to learn more about agriculture by tapping into their priorities and feelings? Seems like quite a challenge, right? That's why we're so grateful to Robin for sharing how we can do that effectively. In addition to in-person speaking engagements, Robin is also a best-selling author and podcaster. So if you'd like to learn even more directly from him, we'd encourage you to check out his website, which is linked down in the notes for this episode. And the timing of Robin's message is perfect, with Ag Week, which is March 17th through the 23rd, and National Ag Day, which is Tuesday, March 19th, just around the corner. We hope you take advantage of this timely opportunity to pique someone's interest and curiosity about agriculture. That's all for this episode of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for the next one on March 25th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to The Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.